Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to another episode of Knife Vlog. We've got a lot of knives. We've got new version of the cold steel drop forged Survivalist. I've got some kitchen cutlery. You gotta butcher some meat for grilling season, right? Budget friendly kitchen cutlery. A lot of other budget stuff. We have a machete. There's a new Gladiator or Gladius style machete in town, and not a knife, but this tire thumper. You know, what do truckers use to sometimes defend themselves? All right, so lots of stuff and much more to cover in this episode. Let's get to it. This knife right here is the cold steel drop forged Survivalist. I've already done a full review of this knife, and I'll include the link to that video if you want to check it out. But Cold Steel has come out with a new improved version of this knife, and I gotta say, I like the new model better. It's very similar to this model, but with a few improvements, as you will see. Here is the new one, and it has you know, that typical Cold Steel sheath. And here's a closer look at the scale, and it does have a rough texture. Right, so yeah, I mean, that just increases the usability of this blade, and I like that they went with this coating because it's just more simple than rather than this, which has a coating and then that finish under it. And you see, after a bit of use, this thing looks really beat up. I think this thing will wear more nicely. And overall, it's just a worthy improvement that I'm sure, you know, thousands of people probably requested this, and they were wise to listen. So this improved version, yeah, I'm definitely liking it. It's the same steel and everything, you know, the same rugged knife, just a few, I guess you could say, surface improvements. Yeah, so they've changed the finish on this. You may remember the old one, it has you know, it has that kind of light gray or silver finish, and then underneath that, it was black. And so when that wears off, it ends up looking like mine does, you know, with the tip there. All right, so I do think it's an improvement just to go with a very dark finish from the beginning, right? And they've also added handle scales to this knife. Now this is a monolithic design, meaning it's basically one solid hunk of metal, right? But for this, they've added some handle scales just for comfort, which will definitely improve the usability, especially, again, if you have large hands. Those scales are going to give you a more positive grip. Now, one complaint about this type of knife with the metal handle is that it could be cold. You know, people living in a cold area, it's going to be cold. Well, I usually wear work gloves when I use a cutting tool, and when cold weather hits, you know, I use warmer gloves. So I'm not too concerned about that aspect. Because of this monolithic design, this thing is heavier towards the handle than most knives would be, right? So what are the pros and cons of being a handle-heavy knife? Well, basically the more weight you have towards the tip, the stronger chopping you will get with a knife, whereas the more weight that you have towards the handle, the quicker the knife will be to point, meaning to orient the tip of the blade. In other words, this is just a little bit faster in hand if you were, you know, aiming the blade at something. Now that's a lot more important when you're talking about swords. You got some swords that are meant as mainly thrusting swords, and they would tend to have a heavier handle just because it's a lot easier to reorient where that thrust is going to be heading. Right, so with a knife, is it that much of an advantage to be able to quickly point the tip, you know? Probably not. I mean, you're probably not getting into any sort of combat, right? So that's just a side benefit. The real benefit of the monolithic design is just pure strength, right? And that's not to be underestimated. If you check out my review of the older version of this knife, it did hold up really well to basically some abuse. Now the new model is currently around $85, but because that came out The older model is substantially less expensive. It's now about $60, right? So that's a double win because the older model is still good as a project knife. A lot of my viewers have the capability to make their own handle scales, right? So if you want to make that into a project knife, and you could even remove the finish and put whatever finish you want. So that's more of a knife for people that like modding their knives. And the fact that that's going to be cheaper now that the new one is out and everyone's wanting that, it's a win-win situation. Now Cold Steel has a whole drop forged line. They have a dagger, they have a bowie, they have this, which is their hunting knife. And this is not bad either. I've done a review of this, and it's been a widely viewed video. A lot of people looking this up. I still like it, and if you have to cut up animal matter, yeah, that shape is very good for such a task. Yeah, they have Cold Steel now has a dagger. I think they have a push dagger as well in this line. And Cold Steel also has come out with something called the Battle Ring 2. The Battle Ring 2. I'll include a link to the Drop Forge Survivalist line, both old and new, and to that Battle Ring 2, because it's I gotta say, it's a pretty badass blade. Check it out. I might get one if enough people request. I might do a review of that. But yeah, I like this line just for the simplicity, the toughness, and also Cold Steel has chosen some winning blade shapes. Like this is based on an Argentinian design, right? So one secret to Cold Steel, they usually will borrow or try to recreate like blade shapes that they already know have been successful. So I definitely like this line, and I like what they've done with the new model. I don't know if I'm going to do a full review of that because it's the same steel, same exact shape as the old model, which I've already done a full review of. So if you want to see how it performs, just check out that video. And while we're on the subject of Cold Steel, did you know that they have a line of essentially kitchen cutlery? This is made in Taiwan with German 4116 steel. That is a steel that is very easy to resharpen, and it's also very inexpensive, so I'm sure that's why they chose it. I got this for less than $12. I'm trying to get more into like nutrition lately, and one thing I've learned, like good nutrition starts with doing your own cooking. I've cut out all the fast food, even though I love wings and ribs and things like that, pizza. I've cut all that stuff out, right? So I do pretty much all my own cooking now, and so I've been getting back into kitchen cutlery. I was browsing Cold Steel. I happened to see this. Again, it was less than $12. I figured, heck, why not? How bad could it be? And it's actually a pretty good blade. This is a slicer. This is the type of knife that you would slice in the Philippines, we have what's called lechon, right, with a crispy pork skin. But basically, if you had a large pork roast, you could slice off slices, or maybe you could slice up a big turkey breast and so forth. And they have shorter ones too, right? So for the price they're charging, it's very reasonable. So I figured I'd pick one up. All right, you want to get healthy? Do your own cooking. No more fast food. I'll include links to their kitchen line of cutlery. And speaking of kitchen cutlery, if you're into grilling up or, cutting up and cooking large hunks of meat, maybe you're a hunter or something like that, if you need a butchering type knife, I can say I've been using that butcher's knife for the past 4 months. These are Cutlery brand. It was about $26 to $28, which is very reasonable. But yeah, this is the brand. All right, and so, like I said, that's the butcher knife. I've been using that a lot. I have not tried that one out yet just because I've just been using the other one. But there are some situations where you would want it's a hybrid. It's a cleaver knife, right? So basically, you can use the first half of it the same way you would use a meat cleaver. And then the belly of the knife, you can slice through with that the same way you would use a curved butcher's knife or just the curve of your chef's knife, right? So that's kind of a hybrid or a combo tool, but it's basically a cleaver knife. But the main purpose of that would be like slicing and chopping large hunks of meat. Very affordable, like under $30. Why not? Like I said, I can vouch for that when I've been using it. These have convex edges, which surprised me. They came extremely sharp. And here's a close-up of that edge. It is convex. I don't know if you can tell, but this has a lot, these have a lot of slicing ability. Yeah, so if you're looking for some kitchen cutlery or camp kitchen cutlery to slice up, to butcher some meat, yeah, I'd recommend these for under $30. And, you know, if you're not a meat eater, I can respect your decision if you're one of these vegans, but at the same time, most of my viewers are into hunting. So, you know, if you want to stay subscribed, you got to understand this stuff is going to be covered without apology. All right, YouTube, this is a KLEIN Tools Electrician's knife. It's got 3 blades, right? It's got the spear point, it's got a hawk bill, and it's got basically a screwdriver with an edge that can be used as a scraper, so I'll call it the screwdriver scraper blade. All right, now, they also have a 2-bladed version and a single blade version that just has the hawk bill. And I've showed this before, but I want to show it again because I think KLEIN Tools, I think they need some love. This is a very good company. You know, these days, every single freaking multi-tool and knife company pretends that they are the friend of the worker, the friend of blue-collar workers. But a lot of these companies, yeah, all their advertising is all this manly man blue-collar stuff, but their pricing is not. The pricing is not friendly to your average working person, right? And I think we saw that with the price on that the newest Leatherman Free. Well, the reason I'm showing this KLEIN Tools is to push back against that type of thing. KLEIN Tools is one of those companies, much like ESTWING, which really are friends of your blue-collar workers. I've heard from so many people, electricians, who actually use KLEIN Tools and have done so for years and years. So if you want to know which companies to support, you know, I believe you should support whoever is supporting you, right? It's got to be a two-way street. So yeah, if you want to be patriotic and support the blue collar, I recommend ESTWING Tools and KLEIN Tools. This is a very, very useful knife, not just for electricians. It's just a useful utility setup because of the draw cutting abilities of that hawk bill, right? And then you got the spear point blade, which has all the same uses of your typical Swiss Army knife spear point blade. And then it's got the screwdriver and scraper blade. And the screwdriver does lock, right? It has a liner lock right there because with the scraping edge here, obviously it would be very dangerous if it did not lock, so that does lock. It's a very useful little thing to carry around with you, even if you're not an electrician. If you're just any type of work with your hands, you cannot go wrong with this blade. And I've heard the testimonies of many people who have been electricians for decades that use one of these, right? So I will include that link. The price, I believe it's around $35, subject to change, but I will include a link to KLEIN Tools and ESTWING Tools because I think we should support these companies. Now this item is the Reapr Gladius Machete. It is a machete in the shape of the famous Roman sword, the Gladius. And through the magic of editing, there it is. Alright, so they're calling this the Gladius Machete, and here is the relevant data. 420 stainless, got an 18-inch double-edged blade. The handle is FRN, and you saw the sheath. This is currently around $30 on Amazon, and for that price, I think it's a cool item. This is the type of thing someone would buy if they're very fascinated by, let's say, military history, Roman history. You've watched all those documentaries on YouTube about the Roman military, and maybe you got the bug and you want a Gladius, but you don't want to buy a very expensive sword. So instead of that, you can get a machete that is based upon the Gladius design. I see where they're going, and $30 is a reasonable price for what you're getting. Now in this whole category of Gladius machetes, there's several ways you can go. Here I have 3 options for you. Now these are all around $30. All right, that one is from United Cutlery, that is the Reapr, and that is the infamous cold steel Gladius Machete, which I have owned since 2011. Now that's a beautiful sight. Now all of these are usually around $30, you know, up to $35. The cold steel is actually a little less than $30 right now. It's been around for a while. All right, so I will include links to all these. They're all on Amazon, and just so you can compare prices and see which is the best deal at the moment. But yeah, they're all pretty much definitely worth those reasonable prices. Which one is better? Which do I like most? You know, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, the handle on the middle one is kind of, it's just wider and thicker. So if you're a dude with really large hands, you might prefer that one in the middle, just because the thicker handle is going to be better for, you know, extra large paws, so to speak, right? And they all vary a little bit in length, right? I don't know if you can tell from this angle, but these are arranged like that's the longest one, and then the middle, and that is the shortest one. But they've all got plenty of reach, no doubt. I mean, at least compared to a knife. And in the end, I do believe that if you're the type of person that wishes to collect a Gladius Machete, most likely because of the low prices, you will eventually acquire 2 or even 3 of these, just because, you know, you can buy a more sword-like Gladius for, I saw one on Cult of Athena the other day for around $150. Well, heck, you could get 5 of these around that, you know, for that same price. So that is the appeal. It's a budget option, and yeah, you could trim your hedges with it. You might frighten the neighbors. I don't know, but maybe that's your intention. Right? Now, I'm just kidding. But yeah, coolness factor. I think a lot of people like stuff like this. You know, one day, the mall ninjas will return to YouTube and take over once again. But that day has not yet come. Oh, and United Cutlery also makes like a shorter version of this, which is more like a dagger. All right, so I'll include the link to the shorter version of that as well. You know, sometimes people ask, like, would you defend yourself or would you fight with one of these? Like, if you could choose any shape of machete, you know, would you prefer to use a Gladius style machete? Well, you know, the Gladius works best in conjunction with a very large shield, like the Romans had very large shields. So, unless I'm allowed to also choose a shield, I probably would prefer not to use this style of blade. But it's not going to come up anyway. But having said that, if you did force me to fight with one of these, but with no shield, I would do my very best. And, you know, the reach on this and the piercing ability, it really is a very deadly shape, and it served the Romans quite well. Even if you know, you're not going to get in a sword fight, hopefully, but this stuff is still pretty dang cool. So for coolness factor, yeah, check out the links and pick your poison, or, you know, get all 3, as I have done. Yeah, I do have a little bit of an addiction problem, but thankfully these are not too expensive. Now here are a couple of fixed blades in the budget-friendly category. I could not resist trying that knife out. These are both from Grand Way. You might remember Grand Way as a manufacturer of budget multi-tools that I showed in the multi-tool vlog. Well, as I was browsing the multi-tools, I found out that they also make some fixed blade knives. That one was about $12, and I actually bought that as just a kitchen utility knife. But it could also be, it's basically a skinner, right? It's a small skinner. You could also use it in, you know, camp kitchen. But I'm just going to use it as a kitchen utility knife because, yeah, at $12, it was actually cheaper than some of the purpose-built kitchen utility knives from pricier brands. Now this knife actually has a very good handle for a hunting, skinning, or utility knife because it gives you a good grip, but it's also comfortable. And I actually recognize that as the same handle that you'll get on a sharp finger. All right, this is my old-timer brand sharp finger that I've had for a number of years. The sharp finger is just a classic design. It's been around forever. Right? There's like 5 different brands that'll sell you the same basic knife. But yeah, this has the same handle as a sharp finger, and for the same reason. They're both meant as skinning knives. All right, now, because this doesn't have the cutout part on the blade, this is going to be a little stronger construction. Right? So I recognize it as a pretty good basic design for cutting up organic matter. Now this is a very interesting knife. They're calling it just the Grandway Camp Knife. It's got about a 6-inch blade of 440C steel. Right, you see here's my cold steel SRK, and as you can see, if you look at the handles, you know, it's kind of similar, but the blade shapes are definitely sufficiently different that it's not a copy, but it's kind of in the same category as I would say. Obviously the you know, this is made in Japan, and it's a great blade, right? And this is just like, you know, budget stand-in. But nonetheless, you know, for $20, that Grandway is really not bad. 440C is not as bad as people make it out. 440C is actually, way back in the day, that was one of the first steels that was considered a super steel. Now, I know it's not considered a super steel today because other stuff has come out, but it's still a perfectly good steel, especially for that knife being $20. Right? And they did have a Tonto version of that knife, but the Tonto version keeps selling out, so I don't know if that link will be there. But I will include a list of Grandway knives because, you know, they're a little bit crude, but they're very useful and solid for the low prices. So if you're on a budget, consider them. And if you're on a higher budget, consider that cold steel SRK as well. This is the sheath that the Grandway knife came with. It's not a bad sheath. It does hold it in, even without the retaining strap. Yeah, so if you are on a tight budget, check out Grandway's fixed blades. Now, Grandway also sells folders, but I think for a cheap brand, you know, for a budget brand, it's safer to buy the fixed blades than the folders, because the fixed blades, it's hard to mess up a fixed blade. I mean, unless you do some partial tang crap, it's hard to mess up a fixed blade. So there's a reason that I tried out their fixed blades, but I have yet to try out any of their folding knives because I just think the fixed blades have more to offer and are more usable. All right, so check those out. I will include a list of those links. All right, switching gears. This is a tire checker. I got it for $25. I'll include the link in the text description box. This is a very useful item. This item is used to check the inflation on tires. You hit the tire, it makes a certain sound, and it tells you about the tire. Right? It is also used as a rescue tool. If you come upon a car accident, you have to smash a window, get someone out, or if you get trapped in your vehicle and you have to smash out a window, this is useful as a rescue tool, and it has a metal tip. Now you see that it has a metal tip, and that is again for, you know, it just makes it more useful to smash out a window, and it also has a metal tip here if you want to smash that way, right? But truckers have also been known to use items like this in a self-defense situation. And you know, because we talk about knives all the time, sometimes people ask, like, what is a good way to defend yourself against a knife? Well, a gun is a good way, but unfortunately, a lot of people live in areas they're restricted from having a gun. Okay, so I guess if you're not allowed to have a handgun, what is a good option against a knife? Well, running away is a good option, but of course, predatory psychopaths that are trying to stab you don't necessarily allow you a clear lane of escape, right? So if worst came to worst, you know, against a knife, you want something that's longer than the knife. Your average concealable knife is going to have a blade that's maybe 4.5 inches or less, right? So obviously you want something that's longer than a knife, right? And of course, being athletic helps. People ask about martial arts, but honestly, physical fitness is the base of any combat sport. So you need to think about agility, doing push-ups and stuff like that, just basic strength and speed, athleticism. I mean, there's no art that's going to work if you're uncoordinated, if you're clumsy, if you're not physically strong. Like, you need to build yourself up. So think about just like doing some push-ups and stuff like they do in the Marines, basic training. They get physical, right? They run that obstacle course. They get down in the mud. They have a can-do, a proactive mindset. Go to the gym and play some sports and things like that. That'd be my advice. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. When facing a weapon, it's always good to have a longer weapon. And even though a knife is more deadly usually than a bludgeon has a stronger ability to immediately stop someone. Impact weapons have a lot of stopping power. All right, so you want to pick one of these up to check your tires. Of course, I'll include the link to this thumper and a few choice other ones that Amazon will sell you. All right, YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Knife and Gear vlog. All right, now, check out the links. They will all be there for you. Many people have thanked me for including so many links as they are convenient. Well, there's certainly no need to thank me. It was my pleasure. Those links, not only are they convenient for people, they help out the channel financially, but I don't think people realize exactly how many other people are helped. When you do something very simple like purchasing a pocket knife or a tool through one of those links, not only does it, of course, help the companies involved, but it helps so many workers, right? Because Amazon employs workers at their warehouse, and of course there's the people who deliver the items, right? For an item to get from the factory to the distributor, right, there is a trucker that's delivering that shipment. And then to deliver it to you, there's the mailman's job, there's the FedEx driver, the UPS driver, but of course there's construction workers that built those roads in the first place. There's contractors that built the warehouses and the stores where those items are. And you have many local businesses that are now selling on Amazon, so even though you might not like the Amazon corporate monster, it does help those individual stores, which could be in your town, correct? And there's the people who work for the retail stores, for the wholesaler, the factory that made those. If it's imported, there's still people on our side. For example, the guy who works at the customs department has a job because he inspects the imported thing. So that helps everybody, right? Those links help everybody. They help the economy. You don't realize it, but there's like 50 different people that are benefiting and have jobs in part because you simply you purchased a pocket knife, let's say. So don't thank me. Everybody should thank you for participating in the economy. All right. So if you want to help, if you want to help your country, your town, economic activity, man, that's the way to do it. All right, end of speech. All right, so check out the links. This has been We All Juggle Knives. I'm out.